everybody. Welcome to the newest edition of Deals and Deadlines, your sports business podcast with Hadley Engelhardt. You know him as our super agent, our sports business guru. I'm at Chernoff. Thanks so much for joining us. We have a lot of ground to cover today, and you know where we're going to start. The upheaval in college football and coaching. This week we saw James Franklin get the gate at Penn State. And Hadley, we had talked about this last week, in the last couple of weeks, of some conjecture about a guy like Franklin being in trouble. Quite frankly, I didn't think it would happen, and I didn't think it would happen this quick. I didn't think it would also happen when he has $50 million in a buyout, which I want to start there, and then we'll talk about some offset language and how that works. But take me through, you've had clients who have been fired. How's the process? I mean, they call the coach in, do they let the agent know? Take me through the whole steps of how it happens.
Well, it's a whole process, obviously. They go ahead and they have this conversation with the agent, with the coach as well, and this probably didn't happen overnight. There were probably some talks and rumblings that this could happen, and so there's a preparation, and you prepare your client for it at all times. And in James Franklin's case, obviously, he's got some big money due him, some big guaranteed money. Kudos to his agent for doing that. Most of the Power 4, conference coaches all have this type of guaranteed money. His is exorbitant. Again, surprisingly, it happened when it happened. There's no advantage to them firing him as far as hiring a new coach for next year. They're going to give another coach an opportunity to coach the rest of the season. And there's big guaranteed money due him, close to $50 million. And we'll talk about offset language, but there's a whole process, and you prepare your clients for it because, and if it is, you are caught off guard. It's something you have to deal with. We have a PR firm that we work closely with that does crisis management to make sure our clients are very well prepared for it when it comes to the media.
Okay, so there are a lot of ways we can look at this. It's not about the money. James Franklin, in college coaching, you can fail and you get your money, so you're going to pay the light bill. He's doing an interview, as this podcast drops today on Friday, he's doing an interview tomorrow on College Game Day. So this is part of what you're talking about. Image, I want to keep coaching, I want the next job. But the offset language is where we kind of talk about this. He's going to get $8 million a year until he sees the end of that money, or he gets another job. But he has to make it look like he's efforting to get a job in coaching or in broadcasting, so they keep paying. So how real is that?
Yeah, well, it's real because he wants to stay relevant. He wants to continue to coach. And so he's going to look for other work. He's not going to take whatever job is available. But getting back to that offset language is very key that we kind of walk through it. So the school, Penn State, owes him roughly between $8 and $8.5 million per year. If he takes a job with ESPN or with another college and they pay him $1 million a year, Penn State's still on the hook for $7 to $7.5 million a year. So I think it bodes well for James Franklin to stay relevant, whether it's in broadcasting until he finds the right job or takes a job. Do I think he'll get a job that's north of $8.5 million a year? Probably not. That would put him in the top 10, and I don't see that happening after being fired. So if the right school with the right situation offers him an opportunity to continue being a head coach and pays him next to nothing, and I've done it with my clients who have gotten fired and gone to another school and gotten paid basically the minimum just to get the insurance coverage, and the old school pays the lion's share of the money, he can find a quality job somewhere to reestablish himself, even if it's not out of Power 4. If he decides, hey, I'm going to take another job that is a quality job that I can reestablish myself, I'm still making the $8 million. And if he does well for 2 or 3 years and gets a new job, it still may not be north of $8 million. So my gut tells me Penn State is going to be paying him most, if not all, this $8 million per year, close to $50 million over the length of this contract.
Can I talk about the subplot to this? So some Penn State trustees are very upset that the school made a switch from Nike to Adidas, and it's a big deal. We're seeing this happen. We talked about it with Georgia Tech last week. A lot of merchandise and new deals happening because these schools keep wanting the influx of money. So some Penn State trustees are outraged by the school's $300 million deal to drop Nike for Adidas. There's also a little bit in there for Patrick Kraft, the AD at Penn State, about $500,000 associated with the deal. But there are also those who have said they were the push behind making this deal. I don't know if that's true or not, but it can make you wonder about the timing of, he was 2 weeks ago on College Game Day getting ready to face Oregon in a huge game, and then 16 days later out of a job. Do you believe in any way, shape, or form that Adidas, big money deal happening all of a sudden could push for something like this?
I don't think so. I don't think that Adidas would push the envelope that way. I mean, listen, they were in the championship series last year. So, I mean, let's be real where Penn State was just recently. Interesting thing about Kraft, the athletic director. Before he came to Penn State, he was at Boston College. And in 2021, Boston College was with Under Armour. He left Under Armour to go with Adidas. He's now doing the same thing with Penn State. Makes you say,
sure.
Right? Is there some sort of relationship that he has? Reports say that he is going to get $500,000 per year in apparel. I can tell you firsthand, I have clients of mine who have deals with Nike, with Under Armour, and with Adidas. And they've all had an allotment of money to spend, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year. You can't spend it.
No, you can't.
And so to save $500,000 a year for personal stuff of just apparel, that doesn't make any sense. I'd love to see that contract, but it just does, the numbers don't work.
No.
Now, is it an additional $500,000 that is to be used for the university, for all the other programs, for the ones that are non-income generating programs? That may be the case, and that may be the reason why they switched to Adidas, because they're willing to outfit and do things at a higher level than Nike was willing to do with all the other sports. I question the fact that he's personally getting that, because I'm telling you now, you can't spend that type of money on apparel. It doesn't happen. Now, if he's getting some additional funds, that's a whole different story. But with apparel only, I find it hard to believe. I would think it would benefit all the other programs more than it would benefit Kraft himself.
Okay, I'm going to walk into a trap because I'm talking to an agent, but I still have a lot of problem with the buyout theory. I don't understand why these schools are so locked into these buyouts. I understand trying to protect yourself, but there's about a tenth of a percent of coach whoever gets taken from you and goes to a bigger school. James Franklin, about $50 million in a buyout. That was number 10. That's way down the trough. Kirby Smart right now, $105 million. Okay, he's not going anywhere. Ryan Day, $71 million. Kalen DeBoer, $60 million. Steve Sarkisian, $60 million. So let's just go with those. Where are those guys going that you feel like you need to? Kirby Smart's not going anywhere. All that's going to happen is if it ever turns bad, you're going to have to pay him his buyout because you fire him. Same thing for Kalen DeBoer. Where's Kalen? Kalen DeBoer's not leaving Alabama to go to a bigger job.
And James Franklin's not leaving Penn State to go somewhere else.
Why? Good agent work, and I'm not mad at you. I'm curious why these schools don't have a better handle on this.
It's funny. It takes one team, one university, to create this pathway with all this future guaranteed money. It kind of reminds me of pro baseball. In MLB, you see these exorbitant guaranteed contracts when you know they're not going to live out the length of that contract.
Bryce Harper and others, right?
Well, and we can list, we can spend days talking about some contracts. I mean, people are still getting paid to this day, and they're in their 50s. So
Juan Soto being the newest who signed one of those deals.
Correct. Right. So when you do these contracts for college coaches and they're this long of a deal, you know they're not going to live out that contract. You just know it's not going to happen. And this buyout language really hurts the colleges. Interesting thing is these same colleges complain about the money with NIL and we can't afford this and we can't afford that, yet they're in bed with James Franklin, we'll say, for another $50 million. I mean, that could add a new facility for that kind of money. But again, it's supply and demand. Teams get desperate. If you want James Franklin, this is what it's going to take. And if you're not willing to pay it, he's going to go elsewhere. So again, I don't think it's as much that they're worried about him going elsewhere. It's the agent and the coach negotiate, hey, if you want me,
on the front side,
I need guaranteed money.
End of
story. So in his case, unlike a guy who's at a smaller school, a smaller SEC, ACC, or non-Power 4, there's buyout language in there that, hey, if this coach leaves, we need some funds to come with us to now help us get that new coach. In this case, it's really flipped. It's where it's all about the coach just having that protection that he's getting paid that money.
Well, that's it. It's the protection of when you get fired, when it happens, they're going to write you a check or you're going to get paid even after that. So it's huge money. Okay, so the other part of this story is now the leverage that other coaches are going to have, because when there's a Penn State opening, and we have 7 other prominent openings already with more to come, well, guess what? Coaches are going to start getting paid so they don't listen to these offers. Curt Cignetti is that example right away. The Indiana head coach just agreed to a new deal with Indiana on an 8-year contract extension with an average annual compensation of $11.6 million. I didn't think Indiana had that in them to pay their football coach that. So Cignetti's off the board. But all these other coaches who are kind of like hot names, we have one in Atlanta, Brent Key. There are others who are already on the phone with their agent going, I don't want to go anywhere, but let's leverage this and let's get paid to get, to get it now because there's a big job open.
And that's exactly what happens. I mean, I've been on the phone with coaches that I advise, and we've talked about it, where now is the time to use it as leverage. Either A, use it as leverage, I want to stay where I am and try to get more money and get a new contract, or B, I'm ready to move on for whatever reason. It's a program, I can go to a bigger and better program, or I'm at a smaller conference and now I can move up into a power conference. So you use it to your advantage as much as you can, because again, it's about creating leverage, getting the best deal you can get. I think for the most part, coaches are happy where they are and are not always looking to leave. But if there's those once-in-a-lifetime opportunities like a Penn State, I mean, that is a mecca program, like a Texas, like an Ohio State, like an Alabama, like a Georgia. Those programs, obviously, if they come calling, you have to listen. But besides that, if you like where you are, I think Brent Key's happy where he is.
Sure, he's a Georgia Tech guy.
He's a Georgia Tech guy. He's happy. He's in the ACC. They're doing well.
But you, the agent, doesn't have to say that out loud.
No, you wouldn't say that out. Hey, listen, we need to get a new deal. And if they're concerned, like, hey, he's a hot guy and Penn State may hire a guy like that, then, hey, let's up his deal. Yes. Let's up his guarantee. And that's the leverage you get.
So we have openings now. Not those blue bloods you're naming, but good jobs. Arkansas, Oklahoma State, Oregon State, Penn State, Stanford, Virginia Tech, UCLA, and I'll even mention UAB, who let go of Trent Dilfer. Florida looks like it could come open. We say this every year, but it feels like that one is one that could come open, and 2 or 3 others as well. And I say this, and I know there will be candidates to fill the job. I don't know where we're finding quality big-time candidates unless you have the next hot assistant. It doesn't feel like right now there's the smaller college coach that, like, that's the obvious name that takes the job. Maybe they dip into the NFL pool, or Hadley, something you and I have talked about. Is there another life for Urban Meyer? Is there another life for John Gruden? Is there another life for some of these names who are going to win the press conference and you hope win the job and do good things? And Bill Belichick kind of, fit that bill. Is that where we're going? Because these are a lot of prominent gigs.
Yeah, and I think, we'll use Florida, for example. If, and more likely when, they move on, do they go with another up-and-coming guy like they just did? I doubt it, because they took a chance with Billy Napier from Louisiana. Do they go after a Ryan Silverfield from Memphis? You could do it. Great coach who has Florida ties, but again, that's a leap of faith. Again, it's making a step up. Do you do something with a John Gruden, who now has won his lawsuit? It's now going into court, and therefore it's going to be settled, because he's got the NFL. It's a whole separate subject, but it's going to settle. Will that let him get back in the NFL? Will he be a candidate for the Tennessee Titans, maybe, with a young quarterback? You got an Ed Ogeron, who could be a prominent figure. So there's a lot of different moving parts. Or does a school like Florida go after a James Franklin and says, hey, you know what? He's an offensive-minded coach. He's a great recruiter, and it can cost us next to nothing if he's willing to do it for under $8 million.
By the way, he's been in the conference.
Right.
If that matters.
Yeah. And so all of a sudden you can spend $500,000 a year, $1 million to be the head coach, and use the balance to use it for NIL to recruit. So someone may be creative with that. And I think that's a creative way that if a James Franklin's willing to take less to stay relevant, be a head coach in the SEC, and not get paid top-tier money, but get his $8.5 million, I think that program could win quickly if they like James Franklin as a coach.
I think the coach of all that right now has the most to gain is Lane Kiffin. I think Lane's phone is going to ring off the hook. I think Ole Miss is going to break him off to whatever he wants. Or, like you mentioned, Florida, Auburn might also. There might be a watch on Hugh Freeze.
And this weekend is huge for Lane.
Yeah.
Because if Lane beats Georgia this weekend, all of a sudden his value even goes up more. Not that this game will have a do or die, but he goes into Athens, wins, all of a sudden his price tag has gone up that much more. Whether he stays at Ole Miss because he likes it there, or he uses it as leverage to go elsewhere.
A lot of turnover in college football. We've already had a job that has changed hands in the NFL. We're not even at Halloween. We'll talk about what that means. Plus, the NFL bragging again about the eyes that are on their sport, and I get what they're doing. We'll give you the details next. All right, we continue with Deals and Deadlines, your sports business podcast. I'm Matt. My friend here is Hadley. He's our sports business insider and our super agent to the stars. If you're new around here, let me explain what happens. We talk about all things sports business. We have new episodes that drop each and every Friday, and you can find it on any podcast platform by hitting the subscribe button or watching us on our 680 The Fan YouTube channel. All right, Hadley, lots of jobs turned over in college. Not a shock. I am surprised that, we're mid-October and we've already had an NFL coach who was sent packing. That was Brian Callahan, the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, who had the #1 pick in Cam Ward, which I'm going to bring up a kind of a through line with having the #1 pick in a moment. But the money that we talk about in college, you get paid even when you fail. Well, Brian Callahan will get the same cash. For going away, he's going to make $23,000 a day till the year 2029. I said $23,000 a day. He's going to make $708,000 a month. The direct deposit, as long as it works, will pay him till that time. I assume the same offset language would be there if he takes an assistant coaching gig, but he's not going to have to worry about paying the bills.
No. And listen, when you become a head coach, people always ask the question whether you take a job that you really want, but if you're given an opportunity to be a head coach, you've never been one before, you take it. And what it gives you is not the opportunity to win and have a legacy, but it gives you the opportunity to create true generational wealth because you get these guaranteed contracts. And if things don't work out, you're set. And Tennessee's in a mess right now. I mean, since 2022, they've had 8 changes between general manager and head coach. It's a mess there. Now, they do have a young quarterback that people love, and so it's going to be a viable job. Anyone I've ever dealt with, from a general manager to a potential head coach, the first thing they look for in a good job, beside ownership, besides the city, facilities, and even the roster, it's one player they care about, and that's the quarterback. And so you've got one that you can build with. And so if it's someone that you like and think you can build with, it's going to be a job that people are going to want.
I guess the question becomes, how quick are we pulling the trigger on these things? The reason I brought up the through line with the #1 pick, the last 4 times a quarterback has been taken #1, his head coach hasn't made it through his first season. We have no patience anymore. It's not give the quarterback time to cook. Let's let him figure it out. Brian Callahan being the latest example. Now, I don't think it's coincidence that these same jobs keep coming over. They're poorly run organizations. Jets, Titans, Cardinals, Falcons. Like, you can run through the same organizations. But you're right. There's always an assistant coach waiting for his opportunity. It'll be different with me. I'll figure it out. But I feel like we're in the same pool of candidates, right? It's like, let's move Arthur Smith. He goes from the Falcons to an OC to a new job. And let's move Raheem Morris. It's Dan Quinn. We just move all the chess pieces around the board. The question is, if you have options, and you and I talked about this a year ago. Ben Johnson was the OC of the Lions. He was one of the few that has ever turned down opportunities. I'm going to wait for something I like. There aren't a ton of those guys, but if I'm choosy, I'm not picking to go to Tennessee. They're just too poorly run that I don't think I'm going to be given the time to get it right.
Yeah, in Tennessee's defense, I don't know how poorly run they are. Listen, they have a change in leadership, right? The family now, the daughter is running the company, Amy's running the company, and so there's a change. There's a new GM just recently got there.
The Adams family, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. So I think there's a lot of things going on there. They've got a new stadium. There's some benefits. Players want to come there. Nashville, Tennessee, no state income taxes. So there's a lot of positives there. And again, you have this quarterback. Do they go after the next young coordinator, or do they go after somebody who's been a head coach? Getting back to that, if you look at the history of coaches that failed as head coaches, went back to be coordinators, and then came back to be head coaches then, the success rate is pretty good. So there's something to be said for that. And so whether you go after somebody that is a retread or an up-and-coming, you got to make the right decision. You got to make sure it's somebody that can work with Cam Ward, because, again, that is going to be the building piece to move forward.
Well, that's it, and it's a fair point, right? But at the same time, we look around, we have one job open. Typically, by the end of the coaching and hiring cycle, we have about 6 or 7 jobs open every single year. And I was trying to think of names who have been head coaches who have had success. They're few and far between because they get fired for a reason from the first job. So it'll be interesting to see once we get through November, December, when 4 or 5 or 6 other jobs open up, how many of these candidates are going to be the second-time guys? What big names are out there? Do they try to dip back into the college pool again? That's been a thing that hasn't happened a ton. That'll be interesting to see what happens the next time around. Okay, I want to talk to you about some of the numbers. The NFL is flexing its muscles yet again. Number came out this week that the NFL is averaging 18.5 million viewers per game so far this season. It's the highest number at this point in the last 15 years. And we keep talking about them adding more volume, right? Sunday morning games, international games, Thursday, Monday. We have Black Friday, Netflix, all these different places. We're not watering down. It doesn't seem like the games to the point where it's hurting the viewership. In fact, it just keeps going up, which I marvel at.
Yeah, we've talked about it time and time again that the NFL has figured it out, and all the other leagues are trying to copycat and see how they're doing it so they can use it for their leagues as well. But viewership is up. It's up from last year. They're using all different mediums to do it, from traditional TV to streaming to offsets to the Netflix of the world. I mean, they're really Amazon. they're really smart about what they do, but what they have is the product. The NFL is a global product. There's only 18 games, 17 games, so it's once a week, and so people have their eyes on it. And what's really changed the viewership, and we've talked about this, is the ability to gamble and to put prop bets and to do these things. And the partnership that the league has with these entities has created the interest. And more people are getting involved and watching because they have a vested interest in it. And so it's smart business. And you always talk about, you always ask the question, what is the ceiling?
There's got to be a ceiling on everything.
There isn't.
Except the NFL.
Correct. Because there never has been, right? Yeah. We keep on talking about it year after year. Well, listen, this is as good as it's going to get, and it keeps on getting better.
It does. So I was looking at a story from Netflix, who now has Christmas Day football, and they were asked about the idea of pursuing more in the NFL rights package, and their quote was, it doesn't really fit their sports strategy right now. They had the doubleheader a year ago. They have another doubleheader this year with the Cowboys, Commanders, Lions, and Vikings. I believe them today. I don't believe them long term. I just think you dip your toe into the pool with this, and then you realize, okay, let's look at the returns, and then let's look at it again in 2 or 3 years. So remember, Netflix was the last one to the trough in this. They fought the idea of live sports, and then it was some boxing, and then it was some other one-offs, and now all of a sudden they're in the NFL. I think it's going to continue to grow.
And I 100% agree with you, but I also think they're being very smart about this. Is they're not doing too much too soon. They're trying to do it. Let's see what happens. Let's see what kind of return we get, and then we can go ahead and get bigger as the future comes. And again, they were the last one in. They waited. They weighed all their options, and I think the ones that go all in too soon tend to fail. And so I think Netflix is being smart about it. Let's see how this thing plays out, and let's dip our toes in it. If we have success, we'll dip our foot, our body, and we'll be fully submerged in it.
Well, I also wonder, too, these streamers who are also then going to get more into the college football. I was looking at numbers in the college football world. We know the NFL is the king, but college football is a clear number 2 in all the sports, and it's a huge gap when we go from number 2 college football to anybody else, and whether you think that's the NBA or Major League Baseball. College football this season, Hadley, has already had 6 games that have had north of 10 million viewers. Last year at this time, they'd only had 1 game north of 10 million viewers. And that's always sort of the line of like those brands who get 10 million for a TV product in college are Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, those typical programs. I think it's so intriguing to mention this because I was worried that the business of college football was going to get in the way of Saturdays. Like, we spend all the time talking about the business of this stuff. But it seems like on Saturday at 12 o'clock or 3:30 or 7:30, NIL, transfer portal, expanded playoffs, it does not hurt the regular season, and people are invested more than they ever been. I'm so pleased to see that.
I am too. I listen, again, it's a once-a-week sport. So again, unlike baseball and basketball that is played several times a week, you're going to lose some audience members during the week. These are weekend. And here in the South, on Saturday, you're stuck to college football. Sunday is the NFL. And again, it's the partnerships with the DraftKings of the world that allowed people to gamble. And so I think that's added to it. And what we don't talk about is, even though we have these numbers from Nielsen or whatever body of governing of viewership, we don't know the exact number because people are at bars watching games, and they're at things where there's hundreds of people watching it together on one TV. Sure. So you don't really have that true number. Again, I think football, whether it's college or the NFL, is where you want to spend your marketing dollars because that is where all eyes are on during the weekend.
Okay, so we know what's happening in the football landscape and the way the viewing product has changed. Coming up, it's going to change in a major way if you're a hoops fan. We'll talk about what baseball's postseason has done as they try to grab younger audience and younger eyes, and it seems to be working. We'll tell you about it next. All right, we continue with this episode of Deals and Deadlines with Hadley. I'm Matt. Thanks so much for joining us. Hadley, it's hoop season. Round ball is about to start. The NBA season will begin next week. And I want to let the audience know.
Not just NBA, we got NCAA ball coming up soon.
It's so weird to me that college hoop starts this early. But let's focus on the NBA for a minute because I want you, if you have a pen and paper, to keep up with where you're going to have to follow these games. Okay, the new TV deal with the NBA season beginning. Monday nights, there's a Peacock game of the week, so you have to have your NBC streamer in Peacock. Tuesday night, you'll get an NBC game and a Peacock game. On Wednesday, it moves over to ESPN for the national game. Thursday, you get Prime Video starting mid-season, so you'll have an Amazon game on Thursday. Friday, again, will be Prime Video, which if you have your Amazon deal, you get your Prime Video. On Saturday, ABC and ESPN move into the mix, and a Prime Video game, so you get 3 games. And then on Sunday, ABC, ESPN, and NBC will split duties with Peacock for all their action. Did you get all that beyond your own local team on their games? So you don't have to watch it all, but if you want it, it'll cost you.
I am confused.
I know.
It is, I think it's going to hurt the NBA because they have too many medium platforms that people are not going to know where to go to find stuff. It even happens now with Major League Baseball. I try to watch a playoff game, and is it on TBS? Is it on True? Is it on FS1? Right. Is it on Fox? I'm searching and trying to find it. And so when you have a product like the NBA, what the NBA is trying to do is, because they're a highlight game, right?
Well, and remind people, so Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, came out and said, when asked about the fracturing of the TV deal and making it harder for the fans to find it, he said, well, we're a highlight league. You can see our highlights on SportsCenter and everything else, and all the new partners are like, Adam, we're trying to get them to subscribe. And then he tried to put the genie back in the bottle. But continue, because you can say it's a highlight league, you want them to watch.
Yeah, and again, it just becomes very confusing, and how do you go ahead and truly follow your team or teams that you want to see? And so it'll be interesting to see how this plays out for them, but I'm concerned that if you don't have it on 1 or 2 different mediums that people know you can watch it, and it's the home of the NBA, sort of like the NFL. We know on the weekends it's Fox and CBS. Yes, we sprinkle in Sunday night and Thursday night and Monday Night Football change, but we know on game day it's 1 of 2 channels. So the question is, with the NBA, you're just going to have so many different places to go to. It's going to draw more confusion than it is anything else. It's going to have more questions than answers, and I'm just not sure that's the way to go. However, that being said, they've got to find partners. They've got to find people that are willing to advertise and to do different things, and they're trying to find a way to up their viewership and get younger people involved and try to, broach into that subject matter. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. I personally find it way too confusing. Just you reading that list was blowing my mind.
Can I play devil's advocate for you?
Sure.
Okay. A, they don't care because they got the most dollars. Now, they do care because the next time the TV deal comes around, they will fluff the numbers up to say, well, Peacock, before the NBA was there, only had this subscribership, and look at the numbers since then, not being able to prove that it was the NBA that got them there. So they want the numbers so they can have the next TV deal. I don't believe a fan, if they want to watch their game, is going to quit and not find it. As a fan, I'll search it. I have a remote I can talk into. I can do a quick Google search. Now, is there an older audience that's going to be a little trickier? Used to be on Channel 3 and Channel 7. Okay, you're going to have to work a little bit harder to find the game. But what the NBA is doing is what Major League Baseball just did and what the NFL is. We are putting together the biggest money deal we can for the whole value of our TV product, and that's going to be fine. I also would add, back in the day, and you're a little older than me, and I love you for it, there were times when you only got 1 game a week on national TV.
Correct.
You're not forced to watch all this stuff. It's an added bonus. I say the same thing. You remember the days in college football where they started putting games on pay-per-view. People were outraged. $60, $70, and my response was, well, don't watch it.
Right.
You can go to the game. It'll cost you the same amount of money. They're giving you an option. You can be mad at it, and I understand it. Same thing with this. Don't watch. Like, do you need to watch the Jazz and the Suns on Peacock on Wednesday night? No, but if you want to and you have it, it's a nice bonus. I just don't think it's going to be something where, the people are going to turn away. You weren't watching the Jazz or Suns on TNT anyway.
Correct. And here's the other thing that the NBA is going through. Just think about going back to the late 70s. You had iconic figures in Magic and Larry. And then they transitioned into arguably the greatest, Michael Jordan. And then he overlapped with LeBron James.
Don't leave out Kobe in the midst of it, but sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
Now what? Is that they're the next iconic player out there. There's some great players, but is it going to be iconic? And so that is the crossroads the NBA is at right now. I know they're hoping some of the younger guys become that way, but they don't know yet. So maybe part of the thought process is, because we don't have that actual heir apparent that's going to be taking over, we need to cross-pollinate to all these different mediums to make sure we get the audience. So if and when that next iconic player comes, he and his team are going to be on a national stage to showcase his talents.
I think it's a fair point. The NBA went through something like this between the time of Michael and LeBron. There was a time where it was going to be Allen Iverson, and was the league playing to a big enough mass audience. There was a lot of issues with that. So you're onto something that isn't a group of Anthony Edwards or Wemby or names like that. That when LeBron and KD and this group ages out, who is going to be the face? It's always a challenge. you don't get lucky, and I'll say lucky, to go from Magic, Larry to Michael, to mix in some Kobe. Again, there was a little dead spot in between, then have LeBron. That's a long running time of success with a face.
No, and that's what they're hoping for. I think they're obviously hoping for one of the guys to be maybe a Cooper Flagg, that becomes the next iconic player. But again, until it happens, we don't have that person. Yeah. So they're at a crossroads. And so it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And the other thing they want is, even though there's a lot of great international players, they don't want those people to be the face of the NBA. They want a homegrown American to be the face of the NBA. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think it's great if you're a true NBA fan. And again, I feel like a record repeating myself. It comes down to the gambling part of it. Why are they on every single night? Because more eyes will be on it, because they can now bet on this player having an over-under, winning the game, et cetera, et cetera. So again, that partnership has caused it to now make sure we have basketball on almost every single night.
Okay, let's do the baseball part of this for a second. Saw the numbers that the Major League Baseball postseason has hit its highest ratings in 15 years. The Division Series games averaged about 4 million viewers, up 17% from last year, its best number since 2011. Now, those numbers pale in comparison to football. We know that. But these growths for baseball, it's a very big deal. To your point, you do have to deal with not hard finding it, but it's on cable. It's not as, when you're on network TV, the NLCS, ALCS, and the World Series used to be on NBC or Fox, and that's where it was, and it would do better numbers. You're not going to get the number on FS1, right? You're not going to get the same number on TBS. You're also not going to get great numbers when you're still playing a lot of your early round baseball games in the day, middle of the day. You're not getting prime time. Hadley, I'll add one more element to this. We're in a weird place now where only the Dodgers, as we record this, are the big name.
Correct.
Right? The big brand left. You have Seattle, you have Toronto, you have Milwaukee. That's just not going to move the meter. Baseball always has to have the perfect storm. Right teams, right markets, right situation to get these big numbers. So they have to be encouraged that at least early in this baseball postseason, they've seen some returns.
Yeah, when I saw these numbers, I was actually pleasantly surprised because of what you just said. You take those markets, Milwaukee, Toronto, Seattle. They're not global markets. They're not national markets. So other than the Dodgers, what's drawing people to this? Other than they've been good games outside right now of the Dodgers series, the Seattle-Toronto series has been great. Lose 2 at home, win 2 on the road. So there's great storylines that are going on. So I'm a baseball fan, so I enjoy watching and see what goes on. But it is encouraging that numbers are up. And I've talked to people just on a daily basis because I'm intrigued with Seattle-Toronto, and I'll talk to a sports fan. Name more than 2 people on each team, and they can't. Yet, the numbers are going up. So it's great they're doing it. Does it go to the pitch clock? It's also, they've been smart about it. They're starting one game at 6 and one game at 8. And so these games on the West Coast aren't going till midnight, till 1 o'clock in the morning like they would in the past. They start 10 o'clock Eastern time, 7 o'clock local time. They've moved it to accommodate the East Coast. So baseball fans are watching it. So I'm glad that it's happening. Interesting to see what the World Series numbers will be, depending upon who it looks like the Dodgers will be playing on the other side.
Dodgers, Mariners, Dodgers, Toronto. You'll get a young, rootable team against what is the evil empire of the Dodgers who outspend everybody. All right, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I'll remind you again, if you subscribe to this podcast, Deals and Deadlines on any podcast platform, you will get it waiting for you in your feed each and every Friday when we drop new episodes. You can also watch us on our 680 The Fan YouTube channel. For him, I'm me. Thanks to Andrew Groover. We appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll talk to you next time on Deals and Deadlines.